Hare Krishna. Welcome to another evening in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. I'm your host, Chaturatma Das. Thank you very much for joining us. We do want to thank our sponsor, as I've grown accustomed to these last few weeks, Krishna.com. They very kindly have provided us with this studio space, this airtime on the internet, and the opportunity to speak about something that has been a life's goal of mine, the lives of our Vaishnavacharyas. And we want to encourage any of you out there that would like to help support the different projects of Krishna.com, whether it be this Monday night broadcast or any of the other broadcasts they do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or any of their many other programs that help you connect to the worldwide net of the Hare Krishna movement. We encourage you to go to donations@krishna.com, and you can give whatever you'd like to. All right. So tonight we're going to take a little bit of an interesting angle in our pursuit here of what we're talking about over these last many months, and that is the lives of our great acharyas. And we're going to do an episode that tonight I'd like to call The Test. We all get tests in our life, various types of tests that determine what we're made of. So tonight we're going to speak about this in regards to these wonderful personalities. It's a very common question or challenge, depending upon who you're speaking to and in what circumstance it's being asked. But it's a very common question that you Hare Krishnas don't think for yourselves. You just have a set line of stories and angles and instructions and principles that you follow, and you just kind of blindly go about it. Well, of course, nothing could be further from the truth. If we examine the Bhagavad Gita, we see this isn't factual at all. That Krishna speaks with Arjuna. He gives his advice. He gives his instructions. He expresses his desires. He makes it very clear to Arjuna what both sides of the coin are. If you do this, you'll get that. If you do that, you'll do this. This is the way the material energy works. This is the way the spiritual energy works. And he's very clear about all this. But then what does he say at the end? What does he offer to us, the marginal living entities? He doesn't force he doesn't force Arjuna to act in a certain way. Actually, Srila Prabhupada gives a very nice explanation about this. He says the definition of love is that one chooses to act in a certain way. This is the difference between force and love, that one chooses to act in a certain way. So in the Bhagavad Gita, when all is said and done, Krishna turns to Arjuna and he says, Yatache chasi tata kuru. And Prabhupada translates that as you like, you may act. As you like, you may act. So Krishna is not heavy-handed here. Krishna is not giving any particular you must do because I said so and I'm God. He says, okay, I've laid everything out. As you like, you may act. And in this way, he gives him. Now, in the purport to that verse, that's, by the way, it's chapter 18, text 63 in the Bhagavad Gita. In the purport to that, Srila Prabhupada says that by right discrimination, one should agree to act according to the order of the Lord. This is the best way. Now, there's an interesting use of the word there, discrimination. In our modern world, we try very hard not to be accused of discrimination. Politicians don't want to be accused of discriminating against a particular aspect of society. The police don't want to be accused of racial profiling and discriminating against a particular class of people. Men are supposed to not be discriminatory towards women. Women shouldn't be discriminated. All these different things, So, but here Prabhupada says there is right discrimination. What is that correct, that proper discrimination? That is to analyze things and understand what is the best way to act. Not according to my whim, but according to the particular, according to the particular guidelines that I'm basing my life on, hopefully on religious principles coming from Krishna. So, in this way, we will see tonight, we will examine the lives of some of the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We will look at their tests. We will discuss their deliberations. And then we will ultimately be able to analyze what their process of surrender was. So that'll be this evening's program. I want to take just a second. We've got a number of our old friends here in the chat room tonight. I see we've got Kremlin Prabhu is there. Manjesh, it's good to have you back with us, Manjesh. Manjesh just made it in last week at the end of the show. Bhakta Patrick is back. And Sharnay 108 is there. And Tulsi Time. See a new member of the chat room, Tulsi Time. Any of the rest of you that are out there in our viewing audience, we do encourage you that if you would like to just log in and let us know you're there, and that Chuck 108 just joined us, that you're there, and if you let us know where you're viewing from, we always kind of like to get an idea of where people are tuning in to Krishna.com from all over the world. So we're going to start this evening with Sanatana Goswami. We've spoken about Sanatana Goswami before. We've dedicated a single night and we brought his name and activities into the lives of many of the other acharyas that we've spoken about as well. Actually, if we sat here from now until the end of the dissolution of the universe, we couldn't fully discuss the pastimes of Sanatana Goswami. So we won't delve into all the aspects of his life, but there's a particular build-up to a certain pastime that I want to give. Now, we'll all remember that Sanatana Goswami had a great birth. Very, very highly educated, very learned personality. Great wealth was at his disposal. If I dare use the word, fabulous wealth. As we've heard from the Bhakti Ratnakar, from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. He was living in Ramkeli with his brother. They were responsible for overseeing the Muslim government at that time. In that circumstance, the Muslim rulers had, either by force or by persuasion or by threat, arranged for many of the different Vaishnavas to engage in their service. It was just a matter of who you were, just like some of us work for different types of businesses or corporations here while we're executing our devotional service. A similar situation. So, in this way, he and his brother were managing the kingdom, and they met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Ramkeli. Very, very wonderful meeting. I noted last week how Jiva Goswami was a little boy looking from behind the tree and observed this meeting. And this became the impetus for their giving everything up to surrender to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and ultimately going to Vrindavan. So Sanatana Goswami, his circumstances we mentioned was a little bit more awkward. He still was engaged after Rupa and Anupam left and decided I can't do this anymore, so sent some messages in that I'm feeling ill, I'm staying at home not well, can't make it to work today, don't feel, got the stomach flu, oh I have a head, like that. Some of you out there may have used these various excuses on Janmashtami or whatever. So in this way, the Nawab became a little concerned. It's been a few days now, he hasn't been, let me go check. And he goes to his house, pops in, just like you can imagine if the boss surprises you on your sick day. He may or may not find you there. And he finds Sanatana Goswami sitting in the middle of an assembly of great devotees discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. And wait a minute, you're not sick. So he became very angry and he jailed him. Forced him, you have to come back to service, you're ruining all my plans. And Sanatana Goswami told me, I can't do it, do what you like. So he was jailed. And of course we know the story. He was arrested, jailed, he bribed his way out of the jail. Interesting way there, because the jailkeeper was, maybe not the most scrupulous of persons. He was encouraged by Sanatana Goswami. First he tried to encourage him by dint of their apparent Muslim brotherhood. Oh, I'm going to go to Mecca, please let me go. Oh, I can't do that. Well, I can give you such and such gold coins. Oh, well, I can double the gold coins. Oh, I don't know, I can. I can give you more gold. Okay, I'll do it. So, as they say, every man has his price. So Sanatana was able to find out the jailkeeper's price, arrange for his escape. Now, during this time, after he gets out, he travels. He's wandering like a madman, traveling, trying to stay, as they say, off the map, not be detected, and at the same time get away, traveling through the forest, traveling through the fields, traveling through the wooded areas, traveling over the mountains, traveling by the rivers, all these different ways, very, very little to eat, if anything, begging whatever he might be able to find. very, very difficult conditions, just the clothes on his back. He didn't have like, okay, bring the suitcase, okay, unpack it each night, throw the sleeping bag out, blow up the air mattress. No, it's nothing like that. Sometimes you see devotees travel and they have all these things. So, at any rate, he was traveling in this way, and so he eventually came to, on the Ganga, to a city near Patna. Now, Patna is a very wonderful place. Very, very ancient city, very well known. One thing Patna is known for is it is where all of the animal sales, and I don't mean for slaughter, but domestic animals. You need horses, you need cows, you need camels. Patna is very famous for their animal market. And Sanatana Goswami's brother-in-law, Sri Kanta, lived there and was a very well-to-do animal merchant. And he sold horses, as a matter of fact. And in this process, he had attained great wealth, very well-to-do. And so he was happy to see his brother. But, his brother was a bit bedraggled. His brother-in-law was a bit bedraggled looking. It mentions that Sri Kanta said to him, please, you shave, bathe, put on some new clothes, look like a respectable gentleman. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Sanatana Goswami's reply was, I will not stay here and do these things. I have to hurry. I'm leaving. So, in this way, he was continuing on. But Sri Kanta, who, after all, this was his family member, his brother-in-law, he was concerned about him. He wouldn't take anything. He tried to give him new clothes. At least take this blanket. And he gave him, it describes a very expensive, very beautiful Bhutanese wool blanket. And this was his gift because, all right, he can wear it to keep warm. He can sleep on it at night. He can sit on it when he sits during the day. And this way it'll be a multi-purpose item which he can use nicely. You can imagine if he'd have given him some fancy this or that, or, it would have just not been. But this was a very practical item. Many of you that have been in India have seen that the mendicants that travel around, they've got one specific blanket they use. They use it as a chadar, they sleep on it, they sit on it, and like that. So in this way, he had this very nice wool blanket. So, in due course of time, Sanatana Goswami continued on, and he arrived in Benares. In Benares was Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra. They were both living there, preaching in the kingdom of the Mayavadis, if you will. And Lord Chaitanya had come to stay with them. Lord Chaitanya was staying there at Chandrasekhar's home. So Sanatana Goswami arrived there and stayed out on the outer veranda of the residence. He didn't go into the inner rooms. And so Lord Chaitanya could understand that he had come. And he said to Chandrasekhar, he said, please go out. There's a very great devotee has arrived. He's just outside the front of the house. So Chandrasekhar, of course, went out, and all he saw was this apparent Muslim mendicant, because Sanatana Goswami had been living in the Muslim kingdom, managing and looking like that, and had been in prison for so long, and had been traveling through all the forests and the mountains and all like this, and so he did not have much care for his appearance. So Chandrasekhar went back to Lord Chaitanya, and he mentioned to Lord Chaitanya, he said, I didn't see anybody out there. He said, the only person I saw out there was this Muslim mendicant. Lord Chaitanya said, bring him in. And when Chandrasekhar went out, he brought him inside. And when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, saw Sanatana Goswami, he rose and walked across the room and embraced him with great affection and tears, and was so happy to see him. Such satisfaction he gained. And he began to dust off his dirty clothes, began to brush off the dirt from his clothes and like that. And Sanatana Goswami was so embarrassed by this. No, my dear Lord, please don't do like this. This isn't the proper thing for you to do. I'm not qualified. It was embarrassing to him like this. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I am purifying myself by taking your association, by touching your body in this way. And he continued to embrace him. Sanatana Goswami was very uncomfortable with this. So in due course of time, the greeting finished between them, and Lord Chaitanya arranged, he had Chandrasekhar, he said, please take him and make him respectable. he instructed, he said, because the face was unshaven, the hair was long, the clothes were dirty, make him respectable. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport to that verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that this meant to shave his face, to cut his hair, to give him proper clothing like that. But Sanatana Goswami, while he did shave and cut the hair, shave the head like that, he didn't give up, he didn't accept any new cloth. He got rid of his old and tattered cloth, but he kept only 2 pieces of loincloth and a chadar. And this was all he would wear. He did not accept, they wanted to give him dhoti and kurta and this and that, and no, he wouldn't accept. And of course he kept the blanket because this was a very practical function that he was using. So he was extremely renounced. 2 loincloths, 1 to wear, 1 to wash. And then 1 chadar to put on the body to cover the top, and then 1 wool blanket for sleeping and staying warm like that. This was his entire possessions. This is how he had appeared. So in this way he would maintain himself, and he would go out every day. They would invite him, please you come for prasadam. No, he wouldn't. He would go and do madhukari. He would go door to door and beg a little bit of rice, some little bit of sabji, some roti, whatever was there. And this was how he maintained himself. But when he would come before Lord Chaitanya, he noticed one thing, that Lord Chaitanya repeatedly, not once, but repeatedly looked to the blanket. You know, when you talk with someone, you can tell they're looking at some particular aspect of your person, or you have some earring on, or some shirt with a slogan on it, or you know, something, and they're talking to you, but they keep looking at this thing, and you notice that. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya continued repeatedly to look at this expensive blanket. Sanatana Goswami deliberated on this carefully and could understand what was the inner meaning of the Lord's action. So Sanatana Goswami, he went to the riverbank, and where people were there washing their cloth, and he found one old beggar. And this man was, you know, elderly and not very well kept, and he was a beggar. He didn't have very much. He had 1 old blanket he was using. So he went to the man and he said, "My dear sir, I was wondering if you would please exchange your old blanket for this new blanket with me." And the man turned to him. Now, of course, this man, we know that he was aware of his circumstance. He may have accepted, this is my circumstance, but he was aware, I'm in an impoverished condition. I have less than most people. I am in a difficult circumstance. I have no means. And here's this man with this wealthy blanket coming, "Oh, will you trade me your ragged blanket for my fancy blanket?" So he thought, this man is making fun of me. He's giving some joking, you know, tease to me. So he addressed him, "My dear sir, why must you tease me like this?" Sanatana Goswami assured him, no. He said, "I am very serious. I want to trade you this." So the man could understand Sanatana Goswami was serious in this way, and he indeed traded with him. So Sanatana Goswami took this older, not very valuable, not very opulent blanket, and when he returned to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very, very happy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could see that he has understood my mind, he has deliberated on it, and he has acted accordingly. So this was Sanatana Goswami's test. Now, there's a very interesting quote I'd like to read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami repeats the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami in this way. When Sanatana Goswami returned, the Lord asked, "Oh, where is your woolen blanket?" Sanatana Goswami then related the entire story to the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "I have already deliberately considered this matter. Since Lord Krishna is very merciful, he has nullified your attachment for material things. Why would Krishna allow you to maintain a last bit of material attachment? After vanquishing a disease, a good physician does not allow any of the disease to be able to remain. It is contradictory to practice Madhukari and at the same time to wear a valuable blanket. One loses his spiritual strength by doing this, and one will become the object of jokes. Sanatana Goswami replied, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead has saved me from the sinful life of material existence. By his desire, my last piece of material attachment is now gone." So in this way, the Lord actually removed any obstacle that may be there. And as he says, for one to pose themselves as a mendicant, go around begging muddy card, but to have a very valuable, expensive, several thousand rupees blanket, people will just laugh at him, make him the object of jokes. Sometimes we see this, that persons may accept a position of renunciation, yet they maintain some high profile that is unnecessary for their activities. If Sanatana Goswami were traveling all over the world and having to preach, and every day, just like Srila Prabhupada, we see that Prabhupada utilized everything. Prabhupada did not live opulently, but Prabhupada lived with what means was there to him. And we have to look at his circumstance, traveling in the airplane, going and preaching to disciples, opening new temples, all of these different things. Such things have to practically be used. Sanatana Goswami was going door to door begging a handful of rice and wearing a loincloth. So, time and circumstance in that regards. So we see here, though, that Lord Chaitanya was very satisfied with this type of presentation that Sanatana Goswami made after carefully deliberating on the Lord's test, if you will. Next, I'd like to talk about Govinda Das. Govinda Das was the disciple of Ishwar Puri. He had one godbrother named Kashishwar, and he had another godbrother named Nimai Pandit, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. So they were all initiated by Ishwar Puri. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas and retired to Jagannath Puri to continue his activities there. And before departing from this world, Ishwar Puri specifically sent Govinda and Kashishwar to go to Puri and engage in the service of the Lord. Now, traditionally, one would not accept service from their godbrother. This is not the proper behavior. But in this case, Ishwar Puri specifically sent them. So when they arrived and Govinda Das told Mahaprabhu of their plan, Mahaprabhu refused. "You are my godbrothers, I cannot accept the service." Then they both explained to him, Ishwar Puri has requested that this is what we should do. He has told us that this is his instruction to you to accept us, and our instruction from him to serve you. So in this manner, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood what the real purpose was and accepted their service in this way. Now, it was the arrangement was made that while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Puri, that after his lunch, Govinda would come and Govinda would massage his legs. And then after that, Govinda would go and take his own prasadam, the remnants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This lunch, of course, would take place after the kirtan. Now, on this particular day, the kirtan was amazing. Rip-roaring, wild kirtan, unabashed ecstasy in the chanting of the holy name, dancing and ecstatic singing and drums and kartals and horns and just amazing, amazing kirtan. I mean, you can just imagine, if you think about it, the kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath Puri. Incredibly sweet, and then breaking it. Just we've had recent experiences in the company of B.B. Govinda Maharaj, that his kirtans are just so incredible. If you sit in his kirtans, they start off very melodious and sweet and continue in that way and eventually build into a huge rip-roaring kirtan. Or in the association of Indradumna Maharaj, his Harinams out with the Rath Yatras, engaging everyone and anyone in dancing and kirtan. So in this way, these are tastes that we get of ecstatic kirtans. Now imagine the kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. So this particular day, the kirtan was just incredible, and Mahaprabhu was fatigued. Actually, Nityananda went to Mahaprabhu and said, Prabhu, all the devotees are completely exhausted from the kirtan. We must finish it. This is how long they went on. So, in this way, Mahaprabhu finished the kirtan. It mentions the fatigue beset all the devotees until they sat down and took prasad. So they all sat down and had their prasadam. And then after prasadam, Mahaprabhu went to his room. Now, Mahaprabhu was so exhausted, so fatigued from this kirtan. You've all probably experienced this at some big, huge festival. The kirtan is so much, the prasadam is so much, you are just wiped out when it's over. Can barely make it home to get into a horizontal position and take a nap. So, in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu barely made it into his room. Now, those of you that have been to Puri and seen the quarters of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not only were they small quarters, but the doorway was small. It was not a huge door. So Mahaprabhu made it as far as the door and collapsed. Half in, half out, half across. And his legs were in the room, but his upper torso was not. So Govinda Das came, said, Prabhu, he said, I'm here to give you a massage. If you can please just roll over, you're blocking the door, then I can step in and, give you a massage. Mahaprabhu said, I am too exhausted, I cannot move. So Govinda said, Prabhu, please, I want to do my service. If you could just a little bit move like that. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I am too fatigued. I am barely staying alive. I can't move at all. And Govinda continued in this way. Please, Prabhu, please, if you just move a little. And Mahaprabhu continuing back, I am just too exhausted to move. I cannot budge. So finally, Govinda Das said, Prabhu, it is my service to give this opportunity to relieve your distress and your fatigue and give you this massage. So please, I'm asking one last time, you please just move to the side. And at this point, Mahaprabhu said, I cannot move. I am completely unable. You can render your service or not, that is up to you, but I simply cannot move. So Govinda thought, what to do? So he took his chadar off and he spread it out over the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then he stepped over him. Now, why is this such a particular issue? Because one never steps across the body of the devotee or of the Lord. You'll see sometimes if you bump into someone, if you happen to touch someone with your feet, devotees say, oh, I'm so sorry, oh, please excuse me, Prabhu, and they're touching each other's feet and forehead and like that, and asking for forgiveness. What to speak of to actually walk over someone? You'll see sometimes in a temple some newer person or some guest may not know this, and a devotee will be sitting there and they'll step over them. Or if someone's offering obeisances, to step over them like that. This is not correct at all. Matter of fact, here at the Krishna.com studios, I just saw a book on the table. There's a stack of them. It's called Vaishnava Etiquette. And it's a discourse given by His Holiness Bhakti Chiru Swami, a teaching seminar he did on different types of Vaishnava etiquette. I'm very eager to get that book. This particular, of course, everyone knows Bhakti Chiru Swami is the epitome of proper etiquette. His reputation as a soft-hearted Vaishnava, being of Bengali birth, is very, very well known to everyone. So, at any rate, this one particular thing, stepping over another devotee, is highly to be avoided. But Govinda Das did it. Govinda Das lay his chadar over the Lord and stepped over him to get into the room. Then he took away his chadar and he began his service of massaging first the feet of the Lord, just like the Shastra recommends. When viewing the Lord, we start at the feet and work our way up. So massaging first the feet, and then the ankles, and then working on the calves, and then massaging the knees, and then up to the thighs, and then he began to massage the back of the Lord, and in this way relieving the fatigue of the Lord, so much so that the Lord fell asleep. Now, Prabhupada mentions there's a particular use of the word, I can't remember the Bengali part, but it indicates 45 minutes. This was the amount of time the Lord took his snap, for 45 minutes. took a little snooze, if you will. So the Lord woke from his nap, refreshed, and he saw there's Govinda sitting in the room. And he became a little upset. Govinda, you're still sitting here? Why have you not left? You're supposed to have gone and taken your lunch. You serve us lunch and then give me my service, and then you go and take your lunch, but you have not taken your lunch. What is going on? And Govinda Das said, my dear Lord, you were laying in the doorway. I could not leave. The Lord said, could not leave? How did you get in? And Govinda Das said, I stepped over you. Well, you could not step over me to go out? You should have done that. Govinda Das, very, very nicely, he said, no. He said, I could not go out the same way. He said that to serve you, I will accept any offense. I will accept any activity that will cause me to go to hell. I will commit thousands of offenses if it means that I will be able to serve you. Now we see this example also. There's a wonderful story about one time when Krishna had a headache. And that Narada Muni was told the only relief for the headache is to go to the devotee and get the dust from the devotee's feet. So Narada went to several great sages and great devotees like that and told them, I'm here to collect the dust from your feet. Krishna has a headache and he wants the dust. Oh, no, I can't give you the dust from my feet. They would pull their feet back. No, I cannot give the dust from my feet to Krishna. How I will suffer and go to hell like this. Oh, this cannot be done. I'm sorry, I can't help you. So then he went back to Krishna and said, I couldn't find any of your devotees that will give the dust from their feet. Krishna instructed him, you go to the gopis. So Krishna went to the gopis, and he said, Narada went to the gopis, and he said, Krishna has a headache, and the cure is the dust from your feet. So the gopis immediately collected the dust from their feet and gave to Narada. And Narada said, excuse me, you understand, of course, that by putting the dust from your feet on Krishna's head, that this is going to get very bad reaction for you. It's a very sinful activity. This is the path to hell. And the gopis said, oh, that is all right. If that is what it takes to relieve Krishna's suffering, then we will gladly do that. So in this way, the gopis showed that it is more important to serve Krishna than to worry about the result like that. So in the same way, Govinda Das said, I could not step over you. For serving you, I would step over you and incur that offense. But to step over you to go out and feed my own mouth, to take my prashada, this is not possible for me to do this. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, here again, Krishnadas Kaviraj gives a very nice phrase. It's called, in that verse, it's the Antya Lila 10th chapter, I believe it's verse 95. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Bhakti Shastra Shukshma Marna, that this activity shows the finer points of devotional etiquette. Bhakti Shastra Shukshma Marna, that this type of activity by Govinda Das is one of the finer points of devotional etiquette. So, very, very nice. The test, will you commit an offense to serve the Lord? Yes. Will you commit offense to serve yourself? No. And Govinda Das passed this test very nicely. Next, I'd like to speak about Narottam Das Thakur. Of course, we have many devotees are so fond of the pastimes of Narottam Das Thakur. His activities are particularly sweet to us. Srila Prabhupada has mentioned that he has a particular place in our line in the different processes that he has introduced into our practice of sadhana bhakti, and in the songs that we sing, you know. So it is very, very wonderful. So Narottam Das Thakur, I want to speak a little bit about his initiation. So, Narottam Das Thakur, of course, we know the story throughout his life. He was, it was understood that he was going to get initiated from Lokanath Goswami. He had dreams in which this was told to him by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his whole youth was built up towards this. his departing from home, his arrival in Vrindavan, so many stories that lead up to that. But we're going to skip all the way to the point where Narottam Das Thakur is in Vrindavan. He has arrived there, been introduced to Jiva Goswami, and Jiva Goswami is taking him around and introducing him to the different Vaishnavas in Vrindavan. And he Narottam inquires about the residence of Lokanath Goswami. So Jiva Goswami tells him. And Narottam Das Thakur goes to the abode of Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami, as I've mentioned many times, along with Bhugarbha Goswami, were the first two on the order of Mahaprabhu to come to Vrindavan to begin the process of excavating the holy places of the Lord. Excuse me. So, in this way, they were there and living and finding different places of the Lord's pastimes, Lulastans as they're called. And they continued, and then Rupa and Sanatana and all the other Goswamis eventually came. And so Lokanath was living out in a small bhajan kuntir out in the forest. Of course, almost all of Vrindavan was forest at that time. There was very little activity going on in the way that we know Vrindavan now. Nothing like we know Vrindavan now. So Narottam came before Lokanath, and he prostrated himself, offered his obeisances to him, and he inquired from him, as to his Lokanath Goswami, and he addressed himself. He identified himself to Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami asked, "Oh, so you are Narottam? You are a prince?" He told him, "Yes, my father is a king. I am from Bengal, and I have come here under the instruction of my associates, and I'm here to take shelter of your lotus feet." And so Lokanath told him, he said, I cannot initiate you. First of all, you are from a princely order. You are not qualified to live here in Vrindavan. So immediately he slapped him down. This is, of course, the Guru's first business, to immediately give some instruction to humble the disciple. We saw this in Srila Prabhupada's own life with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When he first met Bhaktisiddhanta, before he had even risen from offering his obeisances, Bhaktisiddhanta immediately told him, "You are an intelligent boy, you should preach in the English languages." So immediately, right off the bat. So in the same way, Lokanath, very immediate, gave the instruction to Narottam that, you are a prince, you will not be able to live in Vrindavan. You're used to a comfortable life. Vrindavan is not a place for comfort. And besides that, I cannot initiate you. I've taken a vow not to initiate anyone. Well, Lokanath pleaded. Narottam pleaded. Said, "But I want no one else except you as my spiritual master. I have come to Vrindavan specifically to accept initiation from you." Lokanath said, "No, it is not possible. I cannot do, so just please don't bother me anymore." Because he was living a very solitary life out in his bhajan kutir and simply engaged in chanting and glorification of the Lord through bhajan like that. Narottam was very heartbroken. And at the same time, he was very determined, but very disappointed. So he decided, of course, he was very knowledgeable in the scriptures, in the Shastra, and he understood that by service to a great personality, one can gain their mercy. So he offered that I can perform some service. Lokanath Goswami was very emphatic. "No, you cannot serve me. I do not accept service from anyone. So just be gone." So Lokanath left feeling very dejected, very contemplative, and thought, what will I do? He came up with a plan. Everyone, regardless of their circumstance, their position, they have to, if they have a material body, they have to deal with the call of nature, deal with the business of the body, if you will. So Lokanath observed Narottam observed where Lokanath would go to take care of his morning business. And then when Lokanath was finished, Narottam would go there and clean that place. Sweeping it, washing everything down like that. So basically, taking a very humble position of cleaning the latrine, cleaning the toilet. And in this way, he very, very happily took up this service. and was for quite some time engaged in doing this. Going, and when Lokanath would leave, now of course at this time Lokanath is quite elderly, and he's, also, as we mentioned just earlier in the week, we were giving a class, and we were mentioning how who was it? Raghunath Das Goswami. How Raghunath Das Goswami was in his elder years and not very attentive to his surroundings, not very knowledgeable of all the externals going on around him. He was absorbed in his bhajan. So, and because of that, Jiva Goswami took over the management of Radhakund and the reconstruction of Radhakund and the overseeing like that. So, at any rate, in the same way, Lokanath was not so conscious of his surroundings. And Narottam was able to come in, engage in his activities, and like that. So very happily, he continued doing this. And one day, Lokanath noticed that someone is coming in here and cleaning. This is being done. So he became very concerned. I've agreed not to accept service from anyone. Someone is serving me against my desires. So what he did was he appeared to have left the area, but kind of snuck around behind some bushes and then doubled back to see. And he found Narottam there, and he chastised him. He said, I told you, you could not render any service to me. This is not satisfying me. I gave you particular instructions. And he went on like this. And in the meantime, Narottam in his heart is thinking, oh, finally I am getting some instruction and some chastisement from my spiritual master. He was appreciating this kind of instruction from Lokanath. So Narottam, of course, gave that very wonderful example that he used, and he explained to Lokanath, he said, just as a young girl fixes her mind on a particular boy and decides she will not accept anyone else except him as her husband, in the same way, I have fixed my mind on accepting you as my spiritual master, and I cannot accept anyone else. So Lokanath thought, he said, anyway, I still cannot initiate you, but if you want, you can continue with this service. So for 1 year, Lokanath engaged in this service, and it mentions that during that year he would always take the remnants of, that Narottam engaged in the service, and during that 1 year he would also take the remnants of Lokanath Goswami. Finally, after 1 year had passed, Lokanath called him forward, and he said, by the strength of your vow, you have broken my vow. He said, a spiritual master becomes honored to have a disciple such as you. Send for Jiva Goswami and we will arrange for the initiation ceremony. So Jiva Goswami came and spoke with Lokanath, and then all the arrangements were made. And in this way, Narottam Das Thakur received initiation from Lokanath Goswami. So this was the test, was whether he was sincere enough and determined enough to achieve his goal. He deliberated on how to achieve that goal, acted according to it, and was successful, receiving the mercy of Lokanath Goswami. Oh, another very wonderful example. Another example of this I would like to also mention is much more recent. Someone was asking in the chat room when I was speaking about Govinda Das, was I speaking about this 20th century? I'm sure there are several Govinda Dases in the 20th century in our times, but none of them had any relationship of serving directly Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But now we're going to update a bit from the immediate associates of Mahaprabhu to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Nonetheless, a divine associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but in our current time period. So, of course, we know that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bimal Prasad, was the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And that as the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a very highly educated person, and at that time in his life, very wealthy and very well-to-do, very respected. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, being his son, was also equally learned. Matter of fact, he was even more learned, and the level of scholarship and education and philosophical understanding of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was just amazing. If you read any of his translations or his lectures, it's very difficult to understand them. They're on a very high level. So, in this way, there were many persons that were desirous of having Bhaktisiddhanta as their disciple because it would increase their prestige. Sometimes we find that the guru is more concerned about prestige. You can imagine, oh yes, I am the spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta. Now, of course, that wasn't his name at the time, but like that. We saw this type of false understanding of the position of spiritual master in the pastimes of Bali Maharaj and Sukacharya. When Bali Maharaj was preparing to surrender himself to Vamanadev, his spiritual master Sukacharya was saying, no, you can't do this. This isn't really just a Brahmin dwarf boy. This is actually the personality of Godhead in disguise. He's here to take everything from you. And Sukacharya was thinking, and if he takes everything from you, he takes everything from me, because I'm your spiritual master serving in your court, and my entire life is being maintained by you. And if you lose everything, then I lose everything. So this type of thinking on the part of the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada spends a great amount of time in the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam discussing this and speaking about how this is not the correct way for the spiritual master to behave. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur could understand this, and he instructed his son, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a very close relationship with another Mayapurvasi, Gorkashore Das Babaji. Gorkashore Das Babaji was a greatly advanced and renounced resident of the Dham, always engaged in service of the holy name, and without any material circumstances at all. And equally so, he posed himself as being completely illiterate, could barely sign his name. So, in this way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur instructed Bhaktisiddhanta, young Bhaktisiddhanta, you should go and take initiation from Gorkashore. So Bhaktisiddhanta approached Gorkashore and requested from him, I am here to desire to become your disciple. I request to take initiation from you. And in a similar mood to Lokanath, Gorkashore was renounced and living on his own in a very simple situation on the outskirts of town, on the bank of the Ganga, and not wanting any disciples. He said, I cannot accept you. He said, I've taken a vow, I will not take any disciples. He said, no, please, I'm begging. My father has sent me that I should please. He says, I cannot do anyway. Next time I see Mahaprabhu, I will ask him. So this was his response. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left, and then sometime later he came again to see Gorkashore, and he asked him, he said, did you think about my initiation? Did you see Mahaprabhu? He says, yes, I saw Mahaprabhu, but I forgot to ask him. He kind of put him off that way in a very kind of light-hearted way. I saw him, but I did not ask. So Bhaktisiddhanta inquired again, please, I'm begging you, must give me Diksha. So Gorkashore, all right, I will ask Mahaprabhu next time I see him. So sometime later, second time, Bhaktisiddhanta came to Gorkashore and he said, so did you inquire from Mahaprabhu about my initiation? I asked him, but he did not answer me, so I cannot do it. Oh, Bhaktisiddhanta was very disturbed by this. So he said to him, Bhaktisiddhanta said, Lord Krishna is very crooked. Gorgovinda Goswami gives a very nice lecture about Krishna being crooked. But he said, Bhaktisiddhanta said to Gorkashore Das Babaji, he said, Krishna is very crooked. He is always stealing this and cheating the gopis, and you are his most devoted servant. So how can I expect that you will be very straightforward with me? If you do not give me initiation, then I will have no choice but to take my life. My father has told me not to come back home until I have been accepted by you as a disciple. So, in this way, seeing the determination of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the steadfast, one-minded direction, he gave him initiation. And he was the only disciple throughout his entire life he initiated. And this single discipleship came in very, beneficial at the end of Gorkashore Das Babaji's life, when Bhaktisiddhanta stepped in and took charge of the final final funeral ceremonies, Ayesta ceremonies for Gorkashore Das Babaji. So the test was given, the deliberation and determination was showed, and the goal was achieved by having faith, taking shelter of the Lord, and surrendering. So this has been some examples. We're almost at the top of the hour. There are many, many other examples, both in our acharyas and in our own daily lives, as we can see from Srila Prabhupada's example, the struggles he went through, the difficulties he asked us as his followers to observe while we were assisting him in starting this Krishna consciousness movement in the early days. And there are many, many different examples like that that we can at another time pursue. At this time, we're going to finish with this evening's presentation, and I'll ask if there's anyone in the chat room that has any questions, anyone that would like to ask any subject matters about tonight's presentation or anything else. We'd be more than happy to try and answer those. I see we have a few new people who have joined the chat room this evening. The benefit of these lectures from Krishna.com being connected with the chat room is that it does give an opportunity for back and forth for the listeners to be able to clarify points they may not have understood, and for us, the speakers, myself and the others that share this opportunity, to engage in some conversation back and forth. But we actually, there's someone has requested that we continue on a bit. I do have one other person that I set aside if we had a little bit of time. It's a shorter person, so I guess it won't hurt if we do that. Not the person is short, but the example is a bit shorter. We spoke a little bit previously about Sachimata. And last week we were discussing Vishrambar, and Vishrambar, the older brother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his taking sannyas and the impact this had on Sachimata. Now, Sachimata had two sons. Vishrambar was the elder son, Nimai Pandit was the younger son. And the elder son, as we mentioned last week, as soon as mother and father, Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata, began to make marriage plans for him, he immediately left home and took sannyas. This was under the influence and tutelage and direction of Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya was training Vishrambar. He was regularly speaking with him. Vishrambar was going in daily, hearing the Bhagavatam classes, and this helped to promote the mood of renunciation that Vishrambar developed within himself. Because of this, Mother Sachi felt a little bit of just some tinge of unhappiness with Advaita Acharya. Nothing very serious, but just, Advaita Acharya has caused my son to take sannyas. So she was a little concerned about the impact that this may have on her youngest son, Nimai Pandit. Eventually, of course, Nimai Pandit did take sannyas, became Sri Krishna Chaitanya, and came back to Navadvip, and had a bit of an exchange with his mother there. Now, prior to his going to Puri, and prior to his taking sannyas, he performed what was called the Mahaprakash Lila. This was when he went to the home of Srinivas, Srivasangam, where they would hold the kirtans, and he sat down on the altar there and gave different benedictions to different devotees according to their desires, and blessed them with prema. A very, very wonderful pastime. It's very elaborately described both in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and more elaborately described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. These details are there. So during this pastime, all the devotees are coming forward one by one, and different devotees were getting blessings and encouraging, what about this devotee? So finally, near the end, everyone had been received, but Mother Sachi had not come. So one devotee petitioned the Lord, what about Mother Sachi? She has not received your blessings. Mahaprabhu said, I will not give her my blessings, for she has offended a devotee. The devotees were shocked. Mother Sachi? Your mother? How could she have offended anyone? She is the mother of the universe. She is always caring for the devotees, feeding them, taking care of their needs, giving them kindly instructions. How could she possibly offend anyone? Mahaprabhu explained, she has offended Advaitacharya. She has held some grudge against him. The only deliberation for her is if she gets the shelter and forgiveness of Advaitacharya. No, Mahaprabhu, they were saying, this cannot be. Your mother could not commit any offense. Mahaprabhu was very strict on this point. No, this is what must be done. So Sachimata approached Advaitacharya, and the explanation was given to Advaitacharya of how, that Mahaprabhu says that Sachimata has offended you. Advaitacharya simply laughed. He said, how has Sachimata offended me? It is not possible. I am her servant. She is the mother of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Gaura Hari. How could she possibly offend me? This is not possible. It's unheard of. So in this way, he responded, and they said, well, Mahaprabhu will not give mercy to Mother Sachi unless she can take the dust from your feet. Advaitacharya did not want to hear this. This was not possible. Somehow or another, Sachimata actually attained the dust from the feet of Advaitacharya. And of course, there was no grudge held by Advaitacharya. He completely didn't even think there was an offense, what to speak of, have to give her his forgiveness. So in this way, Sachimata was able to then return, and Mahaprabhu was able to give her mercy. But this was another one of Mahaprabhu's tests, that one must be very cautious in their thoughts about another Vaishnava. One must be very careful about offending another Vaishnava. One must be very attentive that if one does accidentally or inattentively offend a Vaishnava, to get forgiveness from that Vaishnava. Because our entire process of mercy from the Lord is dependent upon the association of Vaishnavas. So with that, we will finish for the evening. We will request all the Vaishnavas in our listening audience to please give me your blessings that I will never offend any Vaishnava, and that we can continue on week after week with these wonderful discussions about the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. So we want to thank you for joining us again in another chapter of Lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. I'm your host, Chaturatma. Hare Krishna. Good